My name is Jessica. I'm 28, and last Tuesday night changed everything I thought I knew about my family. What started as a simple dinner celebration for my sister Emma's engagement turned into the moment I discovered a betrayal so deep it would tear our family apart forever. When her fiancé Marcus made that cruel joke about my weight in front of everyone and they all laughed, including my own parents, I didn't just sit there and take it. What I did next would expose secrets that had been hidden for years, destroy relationships I thought were unbreakable, and prove that sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous when pushed too far. Hey everyone, before we dive into this absolutely wild story of family drama and sweet, sweet justice, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you're ready for a tale of betrayal, revenge, and karma coming full circle, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Trust me, you won't see the ending coming, and you definitely don't want to miss what happens when someone underestimates the wrong person. Let's get into it. Growing up as the younger sister to Emma Martinez, yes, she kept our maiden name even after her first marriage, I was always living in her shadow. Emma was the golden child homecoming queen valedictorian, married her high school sweetheart right after college. Meanwhile, I was the bookish one, the quiet one, the one who preferred staying home with a novel rather than going to parties. Our parents, Maria and Robert Martinez, made no secret of their favoritism. Every family gathering was a showcase of Emma's latest achievements, while my accomplishments went largely unnoticed. Emma's first marriage to David lasted 8 years before it imploded spectacularly. She caught him cheating with his secretary, such a cliché, but there you have it. The divorce was messy, expensive, and left Emma bitter toward men for nearly 2 years. During that time, surprisingly, we grew closer. She'd come over to my apartment, cry on my shoulder, and actually seemed to value my opinion for once. I thought maybe we'd finally have the sisterly relationship I'd always wanted. Then Marcus entered the picture 18 months ago. Marcus Wellington, and yes, he insisted everyone use his full name, was everything David wasn't. Where David was laid back and casual, Marcus was uptight and pretentious. He worked in private equity, which seemed to mean he made money by moving other people's money around, though he explained it in such condescending terms that I usually zoned out. He drove a Tesla, wore expensive suits even on weekends, and had opinions about wine that he shared whether you asked or not. From our first meeting, Marcus made it clear he found me lacking. He never said it directly, he was too sophisticated for outright rudeness, but there were the subtle digs. Comments about how I should really try the gym Emma goes to, or suggestions that I might want to invest in some professional wardrobe consulting. Emma would laugh nervously and change the subject, but she never defended me. That should have been my first red flag. The engagement happened 6 months ago. Marcus proposed at some fancy restaurant downtown, complete with a photographer hiding in the bushes and a ring that cost more than my car. Emma called me sobbing happy tears, she assured me, and I played the supportive sister role perfectly. I even helped plan the engagement party because that's what good sisters do, right? But over those 6 months, I noticed changes in Emma. She became more critical, more like Marcus in her observations about people. She started making little comments about my appearance, my job as a librarian, my single status. Jessica, don't you think you'd be happier if you put yourself out there more? Or maybe you should consider contacts instead of those glasses. It was like Marcus's judgmental attitude was rubbing off on her, or maybe it was bringing out something that had always been there, hidden beneath her previous husband's more accepting nature. The worst part was how our parents ate it up. They loved Marcus. Dad would spend entire dinners asking him about investments and business strategies, hanging on his every word, like he was Warren Buffett himself. Mom would gush about how handsome and successful he was, how lucky Emma was to find such a quality man after her unfortunate first marriage. It was like watching my family fall under some kind of spell. I tried to convince myself I was being unfairly judgmental. Maybe I was jealous of Emma's happiness. Maybe I was projecting my own insecurities about being single onto Marcus. Maybe I was the problem. So I bit my tongue, smiled at family gatherings, and played the role of the supportive sister and future sister-in-law. The dinner last Tuesday was supposed to celebrate their wedding venue booking. Emma had finally secured the country club she'd been dreaming of, the same one where our parents had their wedding reception 30 years ago. She was over the moon, calling it a dream come true and absolutely perfect. Marcus had apparently pulled some strings with his connections to get them a cancellation slot for next spring. I should have known something was off when Emma specifically asked me to wear something nice to dinner. She'd never cared about my wardrobe choices before. I chose a navy blue dress that I thought was perfectly appropriate, not too casual, not too formal. I even put on makeup and styled my hair. I wanted to make an effort for what was supposed to be a happy family celebration. Looking back now, I realized that dinner was never meant to be a celebration for me. It was meant to be my humiliation, carefully orchestrated and perfectly executed. But they underestimated one crucial thing about me. I might be quiet, but I'm not weak. And I definitely don't forget. We met at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where our family had celebrated every major milestone for the past decade. The moment I walked in, I could feel the energy was different. Emma and Marcus were already seated with our parents, and there was something about their body language, the way they leaned in close together, the shared glances, the barely contained smirks that made my stomach clench with unease. "Jessica," Emma called out, her voice bright and artificial. "You made it. We were just talking about the wedding planning." I slid into my chair, noticing immediately that I was positioned directly across from Marcus. In hindsight, this was clearly intentional. It gave him the perfect angle for what was coming. Our parents flanked them on either side, creating what felt less like a family dinner and more like a tribunal. The conversation started innocuously enough. Emma gushed about the country club, the flowers they'd chosen, the band Marcus's family had recommended. I nodded and smiled, offering appropriate congratulations and asking the expected questions. Marcus pontificated about the wine list they'd selected, explaining the subtle notes of each vintage in excruciating detail. Dad hung on every word, while Mom gazed adoringly at her future son-in-law. Then the menus arrived and the atmosphere shifted. "Oh, Jessica," Emma said, her tone suddenly saccharine, "you should really try the salmon. It's much lighter than what you usually order." I looked down at the menu, confused. I hadn't even decided what I wanted yet. I was actually thinking about the chicken marsala. Marcus jumped in immediately. "Emma's right, Jessica. The salmon would be a much better choice for someone in your situation." "My situation?" I asked, though something in his tone made me not want to hear the answer. "Well," Marcus leaned back in his chair, that familiar condescending smile spreading across his face. "Emma mentioned you've been struggling with your weight lately. The salmon is probably more aligned with your health goals." The table went silent. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "I don't recall mentioning any health goals to Emma." Emma laughed, that high-pitched, nervous laugh she used when she was uncomfortable but didn't want to show it. "Oh, Jess, you know what Marcus means. We're all just looking out for you." "Are we?" I asked, looking directly at my sister. "Because I'm actually perfectly healthy and I can choose my own dinner, thanks." That's when Marcus really went for the kill. "Jessica, there's no need to get defensive. We're family now, or will be soon. Family tells each other the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." He leaned forward, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when explaining his job to people he considered intellectually inferior. "The truth is, you've let yourself go. I noticed it the first time we met, but I didn't want to say anything. But now, with the wedding coming up and family photos being taken, Emma and I thought someone should address the elephant in the room." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, could feel my hands starting to shake. But what hurt more than Marcus's words was the fact that no one, not Emma, not my parents, said anything to defend me. Then Dad chuckled. It started as a low rumble, then built into a full laugh. Well, Marcus certainly doesn't mince words, does he? Mom joined in next. He's not wrong, though. Jessica, honey, you have been looking a bit fuller lately. And then Emma, my own sister, the person I'd comforted through her divorce, the one I'd helped plan this very engagement celebration, Emma started laughing too. I'm sorry, Jess, she gasped between giggles, but the look on your face, Marcus, you're terrible, but you're not wrong. Someone had to say it eventually. The three people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were sitting there laughing at my humiliation. Marcus looked triumphant, like he'd just won some kind of twisted game. The other diners had started to notice our table, some turning to stare at the commotion. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds absorbing the full weight of their betrayal. This wasn't spontaneous cruelty, this was planned. They had discussed me beforehand, decided collectively that I needed to be taken down a peg, and chosen this public venue to do it. But here's what they didn't know about me. I've never been one to make scenes. I don't yell, I don't throw things, I don't storm out dramatically. I'm a librarian, for crying out loud. I research, I plan, I think things through carefully. And I had been thinking about my family dynamics for a very long time. So, instead of breaking down or fighting back in the moment, I did something that probably confused them. I smiled. You know what, Marcus, I said, my voice perfectly calm. You're absolutely right. Someone should address the elephant in the room. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery, scrolling to a folder I'd created months ago but never thought I'd actually use. Since we're being honest with each other now, there are a few elephants I've been meaning to discuss. The laughter died immediately. Emma's face went pale. Marcus's confident smirk faltered. Jessica, Mom said nervously, what are you? Oh, I think Marcus wants to hear this, Mom. After all, he believes families should tell each other the truth even when it's uncomfortable. I looked directly at him, that same calm smile still on my face. Isn't that right, Marcus? And that's when I showed them the first photo. You know, there's something absolutely beautiful about watching someone's entire world crumble in real time. If you're enjoying this story of family drama and justice being served, and you can already feel that sweet karma building up, go ahead and hit that like button. Because trust me, we're just getting started, and what Jessica's about to reveal will blow your mind. Don't you dare click away now, the best part is coming. The first photo I showed them was Marcus and Emma's maid of honor Stephanie kissing in the parking lot of the country club where they'd supposedly been discussing wedding details 3 weeks ago. It was a passionate, unmistakable, definitely not platonic kiss with Marcus's hands tangled in Stephanie's hair and her arms wrapped around his neck. Emma gasped so loudly that the table next to us turned to stare. What? What is this? This, I said, still maintaining that eerily calm voice, is what I saw when I went to drop off those wedding favor samples you asked me to pick up. You remember, Emma, you specifically asked me to meet you guys at the club, then called at the last minute to say you couldn't make it. But Marcus was still there. With Stephanie. Marcus had gone completely white. Jessica, you don't understand what you saw. Oh, but I do understand, Marcus. I understand perfectly. I swiped to the next photo. Because I stayed. I watched. And I documented. The second photo showed them getting into Marcus's Tesla together. The timestamp showed it was taken 40 minutes after the first photo. I followed you to the Marriott downtown. I continued, my voice still that same unsettling calm. And I waited in the lobby. Hotel security cameras are interesting things, aren't they? Especially when you know someone who works in hotel management and can access footage when there's suspected infidelity involved. Emma's breathing had become shallow and rapid. Stephanie wouldn't. She's my best friend. Was I corrected? She was your best friend. right up until Marcus started sleeping with her 6 months ago, which, coincidentally, is right around the time you got engaged. I showed them the next series of photos, Marcus and Stephanie entering the hotel, time-stamped receipts from the hotel restaurant, showing 2 dinners ordered to a room registered under Marcus's name, and security footage screenshots, showing them leaving together 2 hours later. But wait, I said, putting my phone down for a moment. There's more. The entire table was frozen in shock. Dad looked like he might have a heart attack. Mom was clutching her pearls, literally clutching the strand of pearls around her neck. Emma was staring at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. You see, once I discovered Marcus's little side hobby, I became very interested in learning more about my future brother-in-law. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look and have the research skills of a professional librarian. I pulled out a manila folder that I'd been keeping in my purse. Yes, I'd come to dinner prepared for this exact moment. Marcus Wellington, I began reading from the documents inside, graduated from State University with a bachelor's degree in business administration. Not Harvard Business School, as he told Emma. Not even an MBA at all, actually. Marcus tried to interrupt. Jessica, I'm not finished. My voice had developed an edge, now still controlled, but with clear steel beneath it. Marcus Wellington has never worked in private equity. He's a mid-level sales associate at Henderson Financial Services, basically a glorified insurance salesman. His salary is approximately $65,000 a year, not the multiple 6 figures he's claimed. Emma's face had gone from pale to green. That's impossible. The ring, the car, the ring is cubic zirconia. Very good quality, but still fake. I had it appraised by a jeweler friend. It's worth about $300. I slid the appraisal document across the table. The Tesla is leased, and according to these credit reports, he's 3 payments behind. Credit reports. Marcus finally found his voice. How did you get publicly available information, Marcus? You'd be amazed what's out there when you know how to look. Speaking of which, did you tell Emma about your previous bankruptcy? The one from 5 years ago when your last relationship ended and the woman you were living with discovered you'd been forging her name on credit applications? Folder seemed bottomless. I had phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between Marcus and Stephanie. Bank statements showing that his expensive dinners and weekend trips were all funded by cash advances on credit cards that were nearly maxed out. Employment verification from Henderson, financial confirming his actual position and salary. But here's my favorite part, I said, pulling out the final document. Marriage license records from Clark County, Nevada. Emma looked confused. What does Nevada have to Marcus got married in Vegas 8 months ago? To a woman named Linda Patterson. They're still married. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the ice settling in my water glass. You're lying, Emma whispered. You have to be lying. I slid the marriage certificate across the table. It was all there, Marcus's name signature, the date that fell right between when he'd started dating Emma and when he'd proposed. I hired a private investigator to confirm it, I said. Linda lives in Arizona. She thinks Marcus works in private equity too. She thinks his name is Mark Williams, and she thinks he's faithful to her. Marcus stood up so abruptly his chair nearly fell over. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Actually, you do, I said, still not raising my voice. Because I'm not done yet. You wanted to address the elephant in the room, Marcus? Well, congratulations. You've succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. I stood up as well, gathering my folder and my phone. Emma, the choice is yours. You can marry a lying, cheating, broke bigamist if you want, but you'll do it without me there, and without the family money Dad promised to contribute to the wedding fund. Dad sputtered. Jessica, you can't dictate. Actually, Dad, I can. Because I'm the one who's been managing Mom's investment portfolio for the past 3 years, remember? The one that's funding Emma's dream wedding. The portfolio that's in my name as the financial trustee I had. Never seen my father look so stunned. Mom was crying now, but I couldn't tell if it was from shock or embarrassment. You have 48 hours to call off the engagement publicly, I told Emma. After that, I release everything I've found to everyone on your guest list. Your choice. And then I walked out of Romano's, leaving behind the family who had spent years making me feel small and worthless. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been planning this moment for years, waiting for them to finally push me too far. And tonight they had. The real revenge was just beginning. The 48 hours I gave Emma weren't random. I needed that time to execute the final phase of my plan. You see, while my family saw me as the quiet, unsuccessful sister, they forgot that librarians are essentially professional investigators. We know how to research, how to verify sources, and most importantly, how to find information that people want to keep hidden. I'd been building my case against Marcus for months, ever since something about him struck me as fundamentally wrong during Emma's engagement party. It started with small inconsistencies, stories that didn't quite add up, educational credentials that seemed vague when pressed for details, and an expensive lifestyle that didn't match what I could verify about his employment. The morning after our disastrous dinner, I received 3 phone calls. The first was from Mom crying and begging me to reconsider this madness and think about what this would do to the family. The second was from Dad, angry and demanding I hand over control of Mom's investment portfolio immediately. The third was from Emma, sobbing and insisting that I was wrong about everything, that Marcus had explanations for all of it. None of them asked if I was okay. None of them apologized for the humiliation at dinner. They were only concerned about damage control. That's when I knew I was making the right choice. I spent those 2 days putting the finishing touches on my investigation. The private investigator I'd hired, a former police detective named Sarah Chen who specialized in financial fraud, had uncovered even more disturbing information about Marcus's past. There had been other women, other elaborate lies, other families nearly destroyed by his deception. He's a sophisticated con artist, Sarah explained as we met in her office downtown. He targets women from wealthy families, studies their backgrounds extensively, and creates personas designed to appeal specifically to them. Emma wasn't randomly chosen. She was specifically targeted after her divorce because her vulnerability made her an ideal mark. Sarah showed me a file that was even thicker than the one I'd compiled. Marcus, whose real name was actually Martin Wexler, had been running variations of this con for over a decade. The Harvard Business School story, the private equity career, even the sophisticated wine knowledge, it was all carefully researched and rehearsed material. Linda Patterson, the woman he's legally married to, is the daughter of a successful real estate developer in Phoenix, Sarah continued. She's been funding his lifestyle for 2 years, believing she's supporting her husband's emerging investment firm. He's taken her for nearly $200,000 so far. What about the woman before her? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the pattern. Rebecca Nolan, daughter of a tech executive in Seattle. He was engaged to her while married to Linda. Rebecca figured out something was wrong and hired her own investigator. That's how we connected the dots between all his identities. Sarah handed me a business card. Rebecca wants to talk to you. She's been trying to warn other women, but Marcus Martin, he's very good at disappearing and reinventing himself when things get too hot. That afternoon, I had a 2-hour video call with Rebecca Nolan, and it was like looking into a crystal ball of Emma's future. Rebecca's story was heartbreakingly familiar. The whirlwind romance, the expensive gifts that seemed too good to be true, the gradual isolation from family and friends who didn't understand their relationship, and finally, devastating discovery of his web of lies. The hardest part wasn't the money, Rebecca told me, her voice still carrying pain even though her ordeal had ended 2 years ago. It was realizing that everything I thought I knew about someone I loved was completely fabricated. Every conversation, every shared moment, every dream we planned together, it was all based on lies. Rebecca had documented everything just like I had. She'd created a comprehensive file of Marcus's methods, his patterns, his tells. She'd been waiting for the right moment to expose him completely, but he'd vanished from Seattle before she could act. When your investigator contacted me, I cried with relief, Rebecca said. Finally, someone else who could see through his act, someone who could stop him before he completely destroyed another family. Together, we formulated a plan that went far beyond just breaking up Emma's engagement. We were going to make sure Marcus could never do this to another woman again. The evening before my 48-hour deadline, Emma showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't let her in. I was still hurt by her laughter at dinner, still angry about years of being treated like the family disappointment. But when I opened the door and saw her face, I realized that maybe for the first time in our relationship, she was finally ready to see me as an equal. I broke up with him, she said, without preamble, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I stepped aside to let her in. "What changed your mind?" I confronted him with everything you showed us. At first, he had explanations for all of it. The photos were taken out of context, the documents were forgeries, the marriage certificate was fake. Emma collapsed onto my couch, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen her. But then I called Stephanie, and she broke down immediately. They've been sleeping together for months. She said she was in love with him, that he promised to leave me for her after the wedding. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. She thought the wedding was just for show to keep his family connections or something. He told her different lies than he told me. I sat down beside her, feeling a complex mix of vindication and genuine sadness for my sister. Despite everything, I hadn't wanted her to be hurt this badly. "There's more, Jess," Emma continued. I went to his apartment after I confronted Stephanie. I used the key he gave me, and I found things. Women's jewelry that wasn't mine. Photos with other women where he looked just as in love as he did with me. Credit card statements for purchases I never knew about. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures she'd taken. The evidence was damning love letters from multiple women, gift receipts for identical pieces of jewelry given to different girlfriends, even multiple driver's licenses with the same photo but different names. "I don't understand how I missed all of this," Emma said, her voice breaking. How was I so stupid? For the first time in years, I felt genuine sympathy for my sister rather than resentment. "You weren't stupid, Emma. You were targeted by someone who makes a living manipulating people. This isn't your fault. But you saw through him immediately." "No, I didn't," I admitted. "I just didn't like him personally, so I was more motivated to dig deeper when things didn't add up. If I'd liked him, I probably would have missed the signs, too." We talked until nearly 3 in the morning, really talked, perhaps for the first time since we were children. Emma apologized for years of dismissive treatment, for the favoritism she'd accepted, and even encouraged from our parents, and especially for her participation in Marcus's cruelty at dinner. "I don't know why I laughed," she said, tears streaming down her face. "The moment it happened, I felt sick about it. But Marcus had been saying things about you for months, little comments that I let myself believe because it made me feel better about myself, I guess. I was so insecure after my divorce, and when Marcus criticized other people, it felt like he was choosing me over them." It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had, and for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the sister I'd always wished Emma could be. But I still had one more card to play, and even Emma's apology wouldn't stop me from playing it. Marcus had humiliated me publicly, and he was going to face the consequences publicly. "Emma," I said, as she was getting ready to leave, "I need you to know that I'm not done with Marcus yet. What I'm planning next, it's going to be very public and it might be embarrassing for our family." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "He tried to destroy you in front of everyone who's supposed to love you. Whatever you're planning, he deserves it." The next morning, I put my final plan into motion. and Marcus Wellington or Martin Wexler or whoever he really was would finally face the consequences of underestimating the quiet sister. What Marcus didn't realize was that humiliating me at dinner had been the biggest strategic error of his entire con. You see, public humiliation demands public justice, and I was about to deliver it in a way that would ensure he could never run this scam again. I started with social media, but not in the way you might expect. I didn't post angry rants or emotional accusations. Instead, I created a detailed, fact-based exposé that read like an investigative journalism piece. I titled it How to Spot a Romance Scammer, a Case Study in Deception, and posted it simultaneously on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Reddit. The post included every piece of evidence I'd gathered but presented in an educational format. Screenshots of the fake marriage certificate, copies of credit reports, verified employment records, photos of him with multiple women, all laid out like a forensic case study. I didn't mention Emma by name or reveal family details, but I made sure anyone who knew Marcus would recognize him immediately. Within 6 hours, the post had been shared over 3,000 times. Within 12 hours, it was trending on Reddit's r/scams forum. Women started reaching out to me, sharing their own experiences with men who matched Marcus's pattern of behavior. But the real masterstroke came when Rebecca Nolan shared my post in a private Facebook group called Romance Scam Survivors, a network of over 15,000 women who had been targeted by similar cons. Suddenly, Marcus's face and multiple identities were being circulated among a vast network of people specifically trained to spot and expose romance fraudsters. The domino effect was swift and devastating. Linda Patterson, Marcus's legal wife in Arizona, saw the post within 18 hours when one of her friends recognized him from my photos. She immediately contacted both me and Rebecca, and we helped her gather evidence for both divorce proceedings and criminal fraud charges. A woman named Jennifer in Dallas reached out to say she'd been dating someone who looked exactly like Marcus, but called himself Michael Waters and claimed to work in pharmaceutical sales. She'd been planning to loan him $50,000 to invest in a startup opportunity. 3 more women from different states contacted me with similar stories, all dating the same man with different identities, all being groomed for different financial scams. But perhaps the most satisfying response came from Marcus's actual employer at Henderson Financial Services. Apparently, using company time and resources to run elaborate personal cons was against their employee handbook. Who could have predicted that? Meanwhile, the social consequences in our immediate circle were equally swift. Emma had already begun making calls to cancel wedding vendors, but now she was fielding calls from friends and extended family who had seen my viral post. The humiliation that Marcus had tried to inflict on me was now being experienced by him on a scale he'd never imagined possible. His carefully constructed social media presence, the fake Harvard credentials, the fabricated business success, the lifestyle photos funded by credit card debt, was being dissected and debunked in real time by thousands of strangers on the internet. 3 days after my post went viral, I received a call from Detective Maria Santos with the fraud division of our local police department. Apparently, Linda Patterson had filed formal charges, and my documentation was being used as evidence in a multi-state investigation into Marcus's activities. "We've been trying to catch this guy for 2 years," Detective Santos told me. "He's very good at staying just under the radar, never taking enough from any one victim to trigger major alarm bells. But your research has connected dots we couldn't connect before." The detective explained that Marcus was part of a larger network of romance scammers who shared techniques, target lists, and even fake identities. My viral post had inadvertently exposed several other active cons being run by his associates. "You probably prevented dozens of women from being victimized," Detective Santos said. "These guys rely on staying invisible, moving to new locations when they get exposed." Making this as public as you did means he can't just disappear and start over somewhere else. But the most unexpected consequence came 4 days after the dinner incident. I was at work helping a patron research genealogy records when my phone rang. It was Emma, and she was crying again, but this time she was laughing through the tears. "Jess, you have to see this," she said. "Check the local news website. Channel 7 just ran a story about romance scammers, and they featured Marcus as their main example." I pulled up the news site on my computer, and there it was. Local man accused of multi-state romance scam, how one sister's investigation exposed a web of deception. They'd interviewed Detective Santos, used footage from my social media post, and even included a brief interview with Rebecca Nolan about the importance of women supporting each other against predatory behavior. The story was picked up by 2 more local stations and a regional newspaper. Suddenly, Marcus's face was everywhere, labeled as a cautionary tale about romance fraud. His carefully crafted reputation was in ruins, and his ability to target new victims was essentially destroyed. That evening, Emma, Rebecca, Linda, and I had a video conference call that felt like a bizarre support group for Marcus's victims. We were 4 women from different backgrounds and locations, united by the experience of being targeted by the same predator, but only I had been in a position to stop him before he completed his con. "I keep thinking about how different this could have been," Linda said. "If Jessica hadn't done all this research, I'd probably still be sending him money every month, thinking I was helping my husband build our future. And I'd be planning a wedding to a man who was already married," Emma added. "Living a complete lie for years, probably." Rebecca looked thoughtful. "You know what strikes me most is that he made the same mistake with all of us. He underestimated us. He thought we'd be too embarrassed or heartbroken to fight back effectively." "But Jessica wasn't heartbroken," Emma said, looking at me with something I'd never seen from her before: respect. "She was just angry. And apparently Marcus really shouldn't have made her angry." As I ended that call and reflected on the week's events, I realized that Marcus had given me something unexpected. He'd forced me to discover just how capable I really was. For years, I'd accepted my family's narrative that I was the unsuccessful sister, the one who needed to be managed and occasionally humiliated for my own good. But when push came to shove, I was the one with the skills to investigate the patients, to build an airtight case, and the strategic thinking to expose him in a way that would prevent him from hurting others. Marcus had tried to make me feel small and worthless. Instead, he'd revealed that I was the most dangerous person at that table. He just hadn't been smart enough to realize it until it was too late. If you're still here with me after this incredible journey of family drama, betrayal, and ultimate justice, I need to share the final chapter of this story with you. Because what happened in the weeks and months following Marcus's exposure taught me more about family, self-worth, and the power of standing up for yourself than I'd learned in the previous 28 years of my life. 6 weeks after that fateful dinner at Romano's, I received a call that made everything worth it. Detective Santos informed me that Marcus, whose real name we'd finally confirmed was Martin Eugene Wexler, had been arrested at the Phoenix airport trying to board a flight to Mexico. He was carrying 3 different passports and nearly $40,000 in cash that Linda's divorce attorney had frozen from their joint accounts. "He's looking at charges in 4 different states now," Detective Santos explained. "Wire fraud, identity theft, bigamy, and financial fraud. Your documentation is the backbone of the prosecution's case. Without your investigation, he probably would have disappeared successfully." The detective paused before adding, "We've identified 12 different women he was actively scamming when you exposed him. 12 families that won't have to go through what yours did." That number hit me harder than I expected. 12 other women who wouldn't experience the betrayal Emma felt. 12 other families that wouldn't be torn apart by his manipulation. The quiet librarian who'd been mocked for her weight at a family dinner had potentially prevented dozens of people from being victimized. The legal proceedings moved faster than anyone expected. Marcus's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but with victims in multiple states and evidence of systematic fraud dating back over a decade, prosecutors weren't interested in leniency. He was eventually sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims, though most of the money he'd stolen was long gone. But the legal victory, satisfying as it was, wasn't the most important outcome of this entire ordeal. The real transformation happened within my family. Emma and I developed a relationship I never thought we'd have. Without Marcus's influence, she began to see how toxic our family dynamics had been. She started therapy to understand why she'd been so willing to accept his criticism of me and why she'd participated in decades of favoritism that had damaged our sisterhood. "I think I was jealous of you," she admitted during one of our weekly coffee meetings, a new tradition we'd started. "You were always so comfortable being yourself, never trying to impress anyone or change who you were for acceptance. I've spent my whole life performing for other people's approval." Emma's apology wasn't just words, she backed it up with actions. When our parents continued to criticize my dramatic overreaction to the dinner incident, Emma shut them down immediately. When extended family members suggested I should have handled things privately instead of embarrassing everyone publicly, she defended my choices without hesitation. "Jessica saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life," she'd tell anyone who criticized my methods. "If that embarrasses you, maybe you should examine why you're more concerned about appearances than protecting family." My parents took longer to come around. Dad was furious about losing control of Mom's investment portfolio and made several legal threats before realizing I'd documented every authorization properly. Mom was mortified by the public nature of the exposure and kept insisting I should have kept family business private. It took 3 months and a family therapy session that Emma insisted we all attend before they finally understood the depth of their failure that night at Romano's. When we laughed at Jessica's humiliation, Mom said, during our session, tears streaming down her face, we broke something fundamental in our family. We showed her that our love was conditional on her meeting standards that we'd apparently decided she wasn't meeting. Dad struggled more with accepting responsibility, but eventually acknowledged that his favoritism had created an environment where Emma felt entitled to treat me as lesser and where Marcus felt safe attacking me publicly. "I taught Emma that her accomplishments mattered more than Jessica's character," he admitted. "I modeled the behavior that made Marcus think he could get away with what he did." The family therapy sessions continued for months, and while we're still rebuilding trust, we've made more progress in the past year than in the previous decade combined. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome was how this experience changed my own self-perception. For years, I'd accepted the narrative that I was somehow deficient, too quiet, too plain, too unsuccessful compared to my brilliant sister. Marcus's attack at dinner was just the culmination of a lifetime of subtle messages that I wasn't quite good enough. Discovering that I was actually the most capable person in the room when it came to protecting my family forced me to reevaluate everything I thought I knew about myself. The skills that my family had dismissed as unimportant, my attention to detail, my research abilities, my patience and methodical approach to problems, turned out to be exactly what was needed to expose a sophisticated predator. I ended up using this experience to completely change my career trajectory. The detective work I'd done on Marcus's case led to consulting opportunities with law enforcement agencies looking to train officers in digital investigation techniques. I now split my time between the library and working with fraud victims to document their cases and navigate the legal system. Rebecca Nolan and I stayed in touch, and we eventually founded a nonprofit organization called Digital Truth Seekers that helps romance scam victims investigate their situations and connect with legal resources. We've assisted over 200 women in the past year, and our success rate in exposing fraudulent relationships is over 90%. Linda Patterson moved back to her hometown and started over completely, but she credits our intervention with saving her from years of additional financial and emotional abuse. She now volunteers with our organization and has become one of our most effective advocates for legislative changes to strengthen penalties for romance fraud. As for Marcus himself, he's currently serving his sentence in federal prison. I heard through Detective Santos that he's attempted to run smaller cons on other inmates. Old habits apparently dying hard. But his days of targeting vulnerable women are over, and that knowledge gives me more satisfaction than any personal revenge could have. Looking back on that terrible dinner at Romano's, I realize it was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. Marcus's cruelty forced me to stop accepting my family's diminished view of my worth and start recognizing my own strength. His public humiliation of me backfired spectacularly, revealing that the quiet, unsuccessful sister was actually the most dangerous person he could have chosen to attack. The night Marcus tried to make me feel worthless, he accidentally proved that I was powerful. He just wasn't smart enough to realize it until it destroyed him. And that's a lesson I'll never forget. Never underestimate the quiet ones, because we're usually the ones paying attention while everyone else is talking. Sometimes the person who seems weakest is actually gathering strength, and when we finally strike back, we don't just defend ourselves, we protect everyone else too. So here's my question for all of you amazing people who've stuck with this story until the end. Have you ever experienced a moment when standing up for yourself revealed strength you didn't know you had? Have you witnessed karma deliver justice in a way that felt almost too perfect to be real? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is share our experiences and remind each other that we're stronger than we think. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that quiet doesn't mean weak, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply revealing the truth, please hit that like button to let me know. Subscribe for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places and standing up to people who underestimate us. And share this video with anyone who might need a reminder that they're more powerful than they realize. Thank you for joining me on this journey from humiliation to empowerment. Remember, family should lift you up, not tear you down, and anyone who tries to make you feel small is usually afraid of how big you really are. Take care of yourselves, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you're less than extraordinary.